let's start with Denzel Ward and the block kick. Can you kind of walk us through that?
Well, I take a lot of pride in that. 1983 was when we developed a drill to teach guys off the edge. Me and a guy named Nick Rapone at Temple University. So we've always had great edgers. Was fortunate to have guys like Denzel. And it's ironic, last week in practice, he had the same play. He didn't block the kick, but he had the same side, the same technique, and he perfected it a little bit between that practice and the game. And just a big time play, a guy that's capable of making those types of plays, and he listens, and he works, and, now you got one to teach off of. And that's the great thing about that from that standpoint is the fact that now we've got it here, and we have the opportunity to continue to use other players off of that tape. And that's validity is what I look for as a coach on plays like that. And he validified, the technique that players developed, and we were able to use it. And it was a big play at a big moment. Congratulations for him and to the team for making that stop right there before the half, because really that's a double score situation. We got the ball the second half, so you're looking to rob points and get points. But really proud for him. Blocked it with the inside hand.
When you said you developed that drill in '83, like what went into, I guess, coming up with that? How did that evolve?
You're always looking for a guy that can crank off the corners, so you just get a crash pad, use a snapper, and you got to teach them not only the footwork, but you got to teach them to lay out, because you're not going to get it if you run by it. You have to get the length off of it. So it was really nice to see, because again, he had that same play in practice last week, so we had the chance to coach him off of that play, which was a time that he did lay out, and had a few conversations with him about that play, showed it on the tape, so he was able to take that and master it himself into getting himself around the corner.
It looked like when the Ravens almost blocked Joseph's game-winning field goal, it looked like they had three guys rushing, and you had two protectors there on the left side. That's what it looked like to me, anyway.
Well, you're going to always have a numerical advantage on defense because people are going to load in this league. People are going to you can't put the 6 on the line of scrimmage to one side of the center. That rule changed a few years back. So if you put 6 on one side, you're either going to play with a 4-man surface on the backside or a 3-man surface. You have to have one player stacked. So it's kind of one of those deals. We rep that. You're either going to get a 3-man surface or a 4-man surface somewhere in and head up and outside the tight end. So that's not any kind of scheme that's unique to anybody. We all use the same stuff in that respect.
So then, that must be difficult to block. It looked to me like what could anything been done better than with?
Well, the biggest thing is protection is always inside out. So you got to shore up the inside from the A gap out, because when you got guys like Myles Garrett that can rush inside, you better be protecting against those kind of guys. So that's kind of who sets the standard for you is the guys that can rush inside, and then you add that guy like Denzel on the outside. And it's all about eyes and trusting your footwork and your technique, but protection's always got to come from inside out. And whether it's 4 guys, 3 guys, it doesn't matter, because you still got to have the ability to protect inside and a little bit outside from the standpoint of how you finish. So, you just got to do a better job on the inside. That's where the breakdowns can come to.
Did you think they jumped offside?
They had called it earlier in the game. It was the same player, same ball key or hand key, whatever they were using, and I thought it looked like the same play to me. They didn't call it, so that's part of the game too.
If they had fully blocked it, is offside? Can they review that?
That would have been a re-kick situation had they called him offsides. Yeah. I don't know. Good question. I'm not sure on that one. I would hope so, in that respect, if I was a kicking team.
Do you think you've resolved your situation at gunners? I know you changed your gunners look like last week. Like I think Denzel Rice was inactive. Mm-hmm. Are you going to keep him? But McKinnon, I think, was one of the
Magnus up, yeah.
And he's gone. Well, he's on practice squad.
Right.
So what are you gonna do on those?
Well, we felt like Denzel, when he was playing fast, got to finish better, got to make tackles. So that was a big-time focus for him. Last week, Coach made him inactive, and sometimes standing on the sideline you can kind of see the game a little bit better. So maybe that helps. Whether or not he'll be active this week, that'll be up to Coach. But, we were glad that Streeter came in and played well, 13 for us. He showed speed. He's got great size. He's got a little bit of experience that some of the other guys don't have. But having had the luxury of playing and coaching Pro Bowlers before, I think it's always better to have 2 or 3 guys. Hopefully we can get a rotation down where we've got some depth out there, some guys that can play and get off the press, and guys that finish downfield. So, you like to rotate them, match them up sometimes based on who they're playing against. But for the most part, you got to always have a backup ready in the game. So we work a bunch of guys out there on the perimeter.
Was Dontrell Hilliard elevated to return kicks?
Dante was elevated to play and have a better chance to play on the 50, on the 46. All those things will kind of come down to coach's decision on game day. I mean, the biggest thing with him, we liked him in the spring. We liked him in the training camp. He had a great game in Detroit. So there's a little bit of a measuring stick for him on how he played, in the preseason games. Talented guy. He's been good in the classroom. Works hard when he was on the P squad, and he's had a good week of practice. So, that'll kind of be a game time decision, I'm assuming, based on, what coach wants to do.
But he could be an option.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because he did it in the preseason. You can't ever have enough returners. Particularly in this league now where you've only got 3 guys back there, whatever configuration you use, whether you use 2 deep or single high, as we call it, you got to have guys that can catch the ball. And so having another running back type guy that handles the ball more so helps us.
Punts and kickoffs?
Punt, I would say, would be a work in progress. We're playing a lefty this week, so that won't be his option this week. But the biggest thing is he's a guy that can do it. Doesn't have a great resume, obviously, in this league, but that preseason game, he had some production.
How do you think Greg handled the couple of misses? Obviously, the one off the upright and then the one at the end of regulation. How do you think he dealt with that? He came back to make the winner, but it wasn't necessarily pretty. So how do you think he's handling all that?
Well, I think the biggest thing, he's still a guy that, he went into the game not having had a miss, so you didn't really know how that reaction would be. His pregame needed to be better. I think that kind of set a little bit of the bar for, being able to handle that, and we talked about that. I thought from the standpoint of getting to him on the sideline, deciding on what we wanted to do to put the ball somewhere. We had good communication. He went back out at halftime, and ironically for us, he kicked in that end of the field. So, we were kind of preparing him to be ready to go into the locker room side because, they had the option of which way they wanted to kick coming out of the second half. And so we were kind of at their mercy in that respect. But I thought he handled it well. He obviously made a statement of what school he goes to. I saw his press conference just to check him out. But, anytime you're a young player in this league and you have a chance to end the game, boy, I wish you'd have ended it earlier, and we told him that. And because that ball was a ball that he aimed right where it went, and it was a good kick. And, the last one, he lined up. He had, I think he had his mind right. I don't think that was a factor.
Is there a more advantageous end of the stadium to kick in? Is it easier to kick into the dog pound, or is it easier to kick into the west end zone? I guess the reason I'm asking is, when you defer, you can pick which half of the field you want to move on. So I'm just curious if if that plays into the decision-making, if there's, an easier side of that stadium to kick in.
Phil Dawson would probably be able to answer that better than me. But, oh, yeah. Well, many times when I had him in Arizona, and it was comfortable. But, the biggest thing is, I think, anytime you're kicking into the dog pound, they're not going to boo for you. So, unless you miss it. But I think both ends have to be mastered, and I think that was, one of the things that made Phil so successful here was the fact that he was able to master both ends of the stadium. And I think Greg is going to have a, good opportunity to try. I mean, last week he came back and made one on the end that he missed one on. So that's overcoming that obstacle, hopefully, and we continue to see him grow in that respect. But each stadium's different. Ours is unique because you got a big body of water outside, and you have to just kind of learn to play it. I was fortunate for me to have all those years in Pittsburgh when, we would come up here and play, and so you knew a little something about the stadium itself and how sometimes the wind plays and factors in.
When you got the job here, though, did you give Phil a call and say, hey, can you give me any kind of pointers or heads up on, on First Energy Stadium and, what do I need to know?
Well, I had Dave Zastadil in Arizona, so he had Phil's insight. And then when Phil came to Arizona, we talked about multiple stadiums. And this one has, some earmarkings that Phil could help you with. And, yeah, we always, special teams coaches and kickers and punters, we're always kind of talking about, stadiums and stuff like that. So, yeah, believe me, I always pick the brain of a player because they have the best perspective. They're on the grass. They got to do it.
Have you told Jabrill Peppers to just take a knee in the end zone on some of those kicks? Because it seems like he runs it out and gets stopped at the 15 line.
Well, last week he didn't do that, so we talked to him, right? But the biggest thing is on a couple of times, if you look at it realistically, he's had a couple of balls now that were right at the edge of the goal line, as well as one that he should have downed. But you gotta trust them, and you gotta line them up correctly sometimes. And sometimes they got to make sure they lined up exactly where they need to because, again, it goes back to the stadium question. Sometimes you got to tilt them a little bit more. Sometimes you got to do stuff like that. But I think the Oakland experience was good for us. I think, the learning curve that both sides of the return stuff, even with Callaway catching the ball over the top of his head, which we talked about before, all those things factor in. And really you want to nowadays try to line them up where you think the ball is going to go and play the rule. I mean, if the ball's going over your head in the end zone and you're going backwards, it's not advantageous for anybody. I don't care if, you had any great returner back there. It's just not the numbers, the percentages are not with you.
So, but just to follow on that, it's easy for me to say it's Jabrill Peppers' fault, but what has the blocking been like for him? Is it?
Well, I think anything could be better in terms of that because we haven't, in the preseason we were doing it with a few different players. So now we've got a little bit, we've added some guys. We've got to get them up to snuff in terms of what we're doing. And then the biggest thing for us is we need to make sure we finish our blocks. Just blocking is one thing, but when you got a guy that's running downhill as fast as Jabrill can, you got to finish the block. You kind of got to get the guy out of the way. And that's the biggest thing we try to teach these guys is your feet are going to be the ultimate factor of whether or not you get holding or not unless you just completely bear hug the guy. So, yeah, we got to be better on all accounts in that respect and try to finish the blocks better.